Welcome to the panel, Take Action, How to Develop a Diverse Workforce. My name is Marie-Claire Eiserman. I'm the CEO of Women in Games and a consultant and researcher across the creative industries and educational sector. And I will be moderating today's session. I'm delighted to have a panel here today who are all experts in their own rights and advocates for gender equality and diversity. What I'm going to do to kick off is get the panel to introduce themselves, and in doing so, panel, could you obviously give your name, what you do, and perhaps just something about the area of focus that you take around diversity so that the audience has some kind of context. So, Liz, I'd like to start with you.
Hello. Hi, I'm Liz Prince. I run a specialist recruitment company for the games industry. And about 14, 15 months ago now, we launched an initiative which is called G into Gaming, really specifically to try to put emphasis on the attraction of women and young females into the industry. Because I think from a recruitment perspective, it's really difficult when you keep seeing shortlist after shortlist of men, especially in development, and we just need to really accelerate change. There are some amazing initiatives in the games industry already, but I just couldn't help feel that we weren't getting anywhere fast and that we're still in 2019 talking about the same thing. So, yeah, I'm very action-based, just trying to help companies to take some steps for real change. That's me.
Great, thanks, Liz.
Hello, I'm Claire Sharkey. I'm head of marketing PR for Weather Factory, and I run my own marketing PR consultancy called Sharkbit. I've been in the industry for about 6 years, so my contribution so far haven't been as powerful and vast as, say, Liz. But yeah, my whole focus is mainly in the marketing sector, etc. I try to make myself useful when it comes to diversity things, either for women or for anything that falls under the LGBT banner. With Weather Factory, we run a thing called Coven Club, which is at the end of every month, and it's primarily for female identifying people to come and just get together and be able to talk about things and feel comfortable and have cake and Prosecco and tea and just hang out, which is something I think that gets anybody together, regardless of who they are. And then on the side, sometimes I run an event called Pixel Inebriation, and the idea behind that is for anybody at all. You can be any sort of human at all, and it's because diversity needs to stretch beyond just sort of one or two groups, and it's to get people together to network, but to do so in a way where one of the big problems I find that people encounter is that the social aspect of the gaming industry and how you meet people to help your career and to just make friends, etc., can be quite daunting. So that event is to help people that are a bit socially anxious to meet people and to, help kickstart their career, hopefully. I'll stop rambling now.
Thanks, Claire, that's great.
My name is Paula Whelan. I'm Head of Diversity and Inclusion with Right Track Learning, which is a training provider based in the Midlands, but we deliver across the whole of the UK and beyond. My role really involves designing and delivering equality, diversity and inclusion training across a whole range of companies and organisations. Most recently, kind of relevant to this day, I've delivered unconscious bias training to a team at UKI. Which was absolutely fascinating, a really good opportunity. So my focus is across all levels of businesses, from the board right through to people on the ground. So, that's me.
Thank you, panel, very much. What I'd like to say is we're quite a small group here. So if at any time that you want to ask a question or simply comment on the discussion, then would you please raise your hand? I'll be leaving some time at the end of the session as well, but it can work in a really good way if it's more interactive as we go along. So please feel confident, be confident, and just engage with the discussions. Okay, so just to kick off then, the terms equality, diversity and inclusion have become increasingly cited and utilised. But digging deeper, what do they really mean? If equality is sameness, diversity difference, and inclusion openness, do these terms work in harmony, or are they actually at odds with each other? My first question for all the panel members is, what do we mean by diversity or a diverse workforce? It's a term that's used a lot, but what does it actually look like, and what are we really aiming for? So who on the panel would like to take that first?
So I wrote something down that I read that really makes sense to me about diversity and inclusion. So it says, diversity is being asked to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance, and belonging is dancing like no one is watching. And that really helps me to kind of think about I suppose the journey of diversity and inclusion. I think in terms of what we're aiming for, I hate the idea of looking at only numbers, but, you know, God forbid we'd have 50-50, right, in the games industry. That would be so amazing. But I think it's about that when people are in teams and they are, you know, working every day, that their differences are respected, that they are being asked, frankly, that we're recruiting in an unbiased way to begin with. So we're really trying to promote the fact that we want differences in our team and not just hiring in our own image over and over again. But when it comes to managers, I was kind of thinking about, you know, being managed in a team and wanting to know that those opportunities are available to everybody and that they're creating opportunities for everyone. And that people feel equal, genuinely equal, and that their voices are heard. Does that answer the question?
No, that's great. That's great.
Being asked to the dance.
Yeah. Claire, what are your views?
I mean, Liz said it perfectly. I don't think I could say it as eloquently as her. You wrote notes. I should have been picking at them. For me, I would just add on to that to me, a diverse environment to me is quite simple. But at the same time, because it's so simple, that's why it's so frustrating when we don't get it. So to me, a diverse environment is essentially an environment where you just go in and you feel comfortable and you don't need to worry that who you are as a person will have some sort of reaction or a detriment effect at all, unprompted. You should just be able to go in, do your job, be happy or not be happy, that's up to you, you know. Yeah, it's about being comfortability, and I think diversity and inclusion and belonging is all some sense of comfortability, and it's a lot easier for us to execute as a group, and that's why an easy answer is also a frustrating answer, I think, because if it is that easy, why do we still have so many issues?
Could I ask you, have you had any experiences of not feeling comfortable in your workplace?
I've not. There's only so much you can talk about now and then.
Of course. In general terms.
In general terms, I think I've experienced not being comfortable with the people around me because I knew that if somebody else came in and was exposed to how these people are, I was uncomfortable with it, but I knew that somebody else that isn't as much as a builder man as me would feel especially uncomfortable.
Yes.
So people's, because I can come across as quite laid back, etc., certain people who happen to be men assume that they can say certain things in an environment and there's a line. I think people aren't aware that there's lines. And so I would always be uncomfortable at the idea of somebody else coming in, and I'm like, you know, they're not used to this, they don't know this, and it's not right. But it's hard to rally, if you're the only female in an office, to rally a bunch of men and be like, listen, we can all have a crack, but you're going over the line, and then that changes the dynamics with you, etc. So I think I've been in positions where I've been uncomfortable, but I've been in positions where I'm more uncomfortable at the thought of what other people would go through.
Yes, and that's probably to do with your own resilience. So you are, as you say, perhaps a resilient person, but again, some people don't have that level of resilience,
exactly.
and therefore it can be problematic.
And some people shouldn't have to have.
Well, no, we shouldn't. No,
yeah.
of course. But I think probably all of us have had to build that resilience. I know personally I've had to. In order to move forward. Otherwise, the experiences are too painful.
Exactly.
Thanks, Claire. Yeah, great.
Yep. I'd probably just like to echo everything that's been said already on the panel. But I would just add, diversity goes beyond the protected characteristics. It's about the diversity of thought, knowledge, experience, diversity of attitudes. But also, I think there can be an emphasis on what we see. People forget about the invisible differences. So just going to your question, people often have to hide who they are, who they really are, and it's not often visible. I'm thinking around LGBT issues, around some disabilities. Sometimes environments aren't safe places for people to be themselves. And I've certainly experienced it in my working career, where I've had to hide parts of myself because of the attitudes of others, and sometimes places are too dangerous to expose yourself. So diversity really, I think the three, equality, diversity and inclusion, you can't have one without the other. And I think you can have a real diverse workforce, but unless you take actions to actively include people, then you inevitably will exclude some people based on their differences.
Thanks very much. So on to my next question is really around considering your experiences and the areas that you work in or have worked in. A lot gets said, but what actually do you see being done? Anyone take that?
One of the examples I've seen of things being done is, and I'm not just plugging you up here, mate, but G into gaming, what Liz Prince has been doing. I think it's always good to constantly be talking, but at a certain point, if all you're doing is talking,
Absolutely.
nothing's going to happen. So I think you guys have actually been doing stuff, and there's other organisations that have been doing stuff as well. But yeah, we need to start doing things, tangible things, and there's only so long we can talk about doing. Just crack on, and I think you've cracked on in a really good way, and you've done a lot. And cheers, mate.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. I think an awful lot of organisations will say they fully sign up to equality, diversity and inclusion, but actually when it comes to actions, that's quite limited. There are still organisations that don't monitor their staff. So if you don't monitor, how can you identify where the gaps are, what the needs are of the organisation? I have seen some really good stuff. There are lots of organisations that do take positive action and do monitor and then make decisions based on the data that they've got. But it's slow progress.
I was just going to mention the gender pay gap reporting, which obviously has made a level of, excitement around diversity for bigger companies. So having to report and really having to show publicly what they look like, I think that has spurred some in the games industry into action. I know that there are working parties within certain big organisations, and there are some really good things that do happen in companies. But I think our concern is that certainly in the SME environment in games, which is vast, it's probably the majority of the games industry, people don't have the time necessarily to think about anything, sometimes beyond survival of their business and getting the game shipped and making sure that they're actually staying in business. So recruitment or hiring or thinking about their team diversity, it becomes speedy and probably people that they know, which just kind of perpetuates the same prototype or the same stereotype within their organisations. I am speaking a little bit later, and I do have a picture of what I always I see when I walk into a room. It's kind of programming, and anyway. So
leave it, Liz.
Sorry,
yes,
mate,
leave it
sorry,
for later.
Sorry. But the bottom line is that I think there are some good things that are starting. I think sometimes there is a massive desire to have a diverse workforce. But not necessarily knowing exactly how to go about doing that and taking steps. And that is why we focused on something so actionable.
And I just add to that, I think it's one thing attracting a diverse workforce and creating a diverse workforce, but actually if organisations then don't work hard to retain staff and change the culture of the organisation, then a lot of money is wasted on recruitment, really, and people leave quite quickly.
And if I can just add, in terms of doing things, I know that more studios now are starting to do sort of panel talks and bringing people from the outside in. I participated in the past few months in a few gaming studios that had did events, say, for a Women's International Day, etc. So they got people from different studios in to talk, and they would... The attendance was primarily the female staff, which was great. But one of the things they did was they made sure that the male staff couldn't join in. And I understand that. I understand that from a... They were told it's best if it was just a woman exclusive thing, and it would be recorded and shared. And I get it. I get about the comfortability, especially there was a section where at the end there was a Q&A, so the women wanted to feel like they could ask anything, and I get that. But at the same time, I think if the people that are, for want of a better word, causing the harm aren't exposed to what the harm is and how it makes people feel and understanding it, how's anything going to change? And fair enough, you can send a recording out and watch it at your own sort of leisure. But if they're there listening face to face to people, I think that helps. So I don't think segregation always helps fix things.
It can be quite divisive. I've experienced it where organisations have had women-only support groups, if you like, or networks. And it's been quite divisive because men get quite suspicious, and then it really doesn't help. So I would argue there are lots of men out there who are would be great allies, and it's important to invite them to the party too.
Yeah. But I get it. It's hard to make. You're trying to do the right thing to make everyone feel comfortable. Yeah. But I think it's have an event where it is all women only and then men only, but or not men only. Geez, imagine. Sorry. Yeah, I'll do one take for the mic.
Do we have, I think it's before I go on to the next area, are there any comments from the audience around this?
I think segregation is very interesting because in my company we did start, there was an initiative where we started about the whole women and working together and being more diverse, and it did start out that men weren't allowed. It was a Slack room, and it was only for women. You had to be invite only, and it did make the men suspicious. And they started it was a women's lunch, and only women could go. And the men were like, okay, well, why do the women get a free lunch every month to talk about women's stuff? And they've changed it now. I think it's started, and now it's kind of grown. That's not there. But yeah, no, I'm telling you.
You know what?
Go ahead, Liz.
I completely agree. I'm not a fan of segregation, but the answer to anything that is why do women do this? Why do women get an International Women's Day and all of that? When you stop being a white privileged male, come and chat to me about what the problem is, right? And I know that people don't necessarily like to hear that, but that is the position of privilege that a lot of men in the games industry hold. And the advocacy that Paula was talking about is something that we 100% put as one of the actions that companies can take. Setting up a female-focused advocacy group with friends across the business. When you talk to men about, let's say it was a meeting and there's, I don't know, one woman and 8 men or something very typical in games. Making sure that the culture in that meeting allows that woman's voice to be heard, because women's typical response to a man talking is to stop talking. And I think men need to understand that they have to be a part of the solution and help their colleagues to shine. I've just taken an actual line from my presentation.
No more then.
I have.
No more though.
Take the mic off me now. Take away from the mic.
Okay, well, anything else from the audience before I just move on? Now, panel, I've just thrown this in. This was not in the notes. This is something that I just was thinking about a bit last night and thought would be interesting and I know you'll be able to say something about it. So, whilst progressive studios are engaging in developing an inclusive culture, some are resistant at the top. And the bottom line is always cited as the kickback. Present me the business case and we'll think about it. So, what do we do about that?
Dear Mr. Leadership Team, so there are enormous benefits to diversity, of course. I think it's been researched for a long time. There are financial benefits if people are only focused on the bottom line. But if you just think about when we talk about unconscious bias or thinking about a team where you're all the same, it's actually on the surface, it seems like a very effective team, and you all kind of agree with one another and, generally you get along. That's actually not the most effective team at all when you look at the research. What you need is diverse considerations and points of view and people to actually challenge one another's biases. Those are the most high-performing teams. There are loads and loads of benefits, all well documented, but my answer is that this is the right thing to do, right? Bottom line, I don't care whether it adds money or anything else. If you think that your business is only there, or you can just kind of look at diversity or look at half the population if you're just talking about women and say it doesn't matter about that unless you give me financial return, then I won't say what I want to say because we're being filmed. But frankly, just, no, I need... anyway, shush. So it's absolutely the right thing to do to make sure that your business offers the right opportunities to everybody. And you will frankly get left behind if that doesn't happen over the next few years when you think about who you want to hire and how you want your business to perform and grow and flourish. You will miss out on the best people who, as candidates from a recruitment perspective, are looking for those businesses with leadership that is at least has some level of diversity at the top level. And if you don't have it and you're not interested, then frankly, you're going to lose out.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really good point, Liz. And, I know from the research that I've done that, the statistics of that balance at the top is still not very good. And actually, I think the gender reporting proved that.
Yes.
But you're right that I think there's a very talented workforce that is just simply going to really pick and choose. And the companies that don't engage going forward, they might not see it right now, and they might just want to think about this year's bottom line. But I think if you want to future-proof your company, then you really do need to think about this properly and strategize for it. Yes.
In my role, I spend a lot of time going out to organisations and having conversations with boards and with senior leadership teams. And again, it is very much, it's usually about putting the business case forward, the bottom line, but also the moral case and the legal case. So it is a combination of all of those, but invariably the board want to see what's in it for them. Some organisations are more progressive than others, but it can be quite a challenging conversation to have, which I find quite odd.
Yes, because it's a site of resistance. Because do they say that about the general workforce they hire? Are they every minute they're hiring or thinking about those practices saying, well, you better show me the bottom line? No, but if you present the case for getting a more diverse workforce or getting more women in and say, well, you've got to do something if you want that talent in, then there's just this block. It's like a block, and it's very rigid. Yeah. And I think in some cases that I've come across, it's an excuse to just not do anything.
Well, I mean, being asked that question at all is, I mean, I'm glad you answered first and then you answered first, because my initial reaction would be laced with a lot more profanities. And then I would probably put you in speakerphone or you in speakerphone, and you can make the case study, because it's a stupid question to be posed, but at the same time, from a business point of view, that's great. But it would be great to get to the stage where you wouldn't have to say, what's the business case, what's the profit in making a more diverse team? Well, I mean, you've kind of answered the question. It's a stupid question, I think, for somebody at the top to ask, because the answers are obvious.
It is a very common.
It is common, and that it's frustrating, I think, as well. But again, like you take over any sort of presentations.
I would say I don't want to paint a totally negative picture, because there are organisations out there who are really committed to a diverse workforce and do train right from the top of the organisation, across the organisation. However, having said that, certainly an experience recently of an organisation that did just that. The top 3 tiers of the organisation were very white, were totally white and very male. So there was great diversity across the other levels of the organisation and commitment from the top to try and make changes, but they're still struggling with it.
Yeah, and I mean, and I think for me that people are struggling, that's actually fine. Yeah. If people are just engaging and doing something, it does take time, and it does take time to change any organisation. And it's signposting. I think if you're a company organisation, to signpost that you are doing something. So even if you came out really poorly in the gender pay gap, show that you're addressing that. Show it publicly, and I think that will make a difference to also then, as Liz was saying, who applies for jobs, because, some people say to me, well, we just didn't get any women, we don't get any women apply. But then you look at the website, you look at the information about the company, and you just think, well, yeah, no wonder they don't apply. And if you back to you. Don't ask me.
If you do the same old approach to recruitment, then you're going to get the same responses.
We've come to the last 10 minutes, unbelievably.
No.
I mean, isn't that how quickly these things go? I do really want to put something out to the audience here. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Don't be shy. Please don't be shy. Anne.
I'm interested in the panel's thoughts about diversity and whether it's a generational thing. And depending on their thoughts, if they think it is, what actions could be taken about that?
What do you mean by generational?
Well, my experience is that the younger the workforce, the more open they are to diversity and fairness and equality. So basically, I suppose what I'm saying is maybe the older white males within the industry, maybe they're, because of their upbringing, their history, etc. How do you bring them into the present day?
I think there's got to be something generational generally, but I guess when you hear that women are still really, really struggling to get investment, and I don't know all the stats. I wish I did, but so a woman trying to set up a new business who's young and wants a diverse workforce and so on, she's still having to struggle to actually get believed in and be seen, as somebody that's kind of a serious player and so on. So I'll be honest, I haven't seen that big a difference in, if you want to say, younger companies. I think when they're companies who are run by very, very specific individuals, so someone like Dan Gray, he's very, very focused on diversity, but there's not everybody of his age group is like him still in thinking. I think the majority of the small businesses that we support who are startups typically do recruit their friends first, and their friends are usually from the same uni, who they hung out with, they're very, very similar people. So I still think there are the same actions that need to be taken and made clear to people, I think maybe those people might be more open-minded to change. Maybe that's the positive from me.
Just to follow up. No, sorry, Claire, were you going to say something on that?
No, I was going to just pass it
Oh,
on.
Paula wants to say something on that. Yes, go for it.
Just from a slightly different angle, there's certainly a lot of research around at the moment that is showing that younger generations, they're doing a lot more research when they're looking for jobs. So they will go on websites, they'll do their research, they'll go on Glassdoor and look specifically at the diversity of the organisation, what the policies are, what the benefits are in terms of diversity, and if they don't like what they see, they don't go there. So I think from that perspective, we're certainly seeing some difference. But I would agree with Liz, if people are recruiting and they're using things like a referral scheme or they're setting up their own business, they're most likely to have an affinity bias and choose people that are just like them, so they end up with an organisation just like them. It might be full of young people, but look very, very similar.
Go.
I think it's worth noting, and this isn't to go out in a negative, but you're being very positive, so I just want to keep it even. Some of the most recent big gaming companies that have had the most negative incidences occurring are run by younger generations, or what's the word, millennials, etc. So that happens to be a thing. So just because you're young doesn't mean you can't be we're being filmed.
You've kicked something off. I can't get a word in. I mean, I'm trying to make a little comment myself, but that's not happening.
I would echo that in terms of the different attitudes and behaviours in the workplace. A lot of organisations are reporting that younger people have a different view on what's acceptable and unacceptable in the workplace. So, interesting.
Well, what I wanted to do is follow up something Liz said about businesses and opportunities, and I just happen to have a handy stat here. But last year, the UK Treasury reported that female entrepreneurs, businesses, get 157 times less funding than their male counterparts. Women-only startups were given 32 million in 2017, where male-only teams received 5 billion. Women receive just 0.5% of venture capital funds. So simply put, if you are a female and you want to start a games company in the UK, currently you do not have the same opportunity as a man. So, that's pretty heavy reading. And when I read it, for me, it actually just reflected what I had empirically thought, because I kept thinking, why aren't there more women-led studios? Now, there are some, and there's some great women-led studios, but in comparison to the amount of startups, small studios run by men, I'm just not seeing that balance, and that kind of made a lot of sense to me. So, just on that level, that's just one thing. There's a lot of work to be done, because we often talk about diversity of women in the workforce, but what about women, what about female entrepreneurs, and what about female leaders of their own companies? So I can see you nodding a lot. Has this something that relates specifically to things you've been trying to do?
So only 2% of VC money goes to women, and my statistic is Silicon Valley in America.
Yes.
I'm appalled that it's the same in the UK as well. I assumed we're different, we'll get some money. No, it's a worldwide issue. So I guess for how do we support women entrepreneurs? There's a lot of support for people as you say, getting into the industry. Students, we go to talk to parents and be like, yeah, we need more women. But what about people? What about retention? How do we make sure women get promoted?
Yes.
Again, the people who have the power, funding or promotion and things like that, they're all up there and they're all like, what's the business case? I'm like, I kind of want to shout back at them. It's like, what's the business case of you promoting another white guy? What's the business case for that? So anyway, I'm getting upset.
No, but I think there is a point where you have to say something and be public about it, and it is difficult. And I know in my role as CEO of Women in Games that increasingly I'm finding I'm trying to find a voice to say those things publicly, even though I know that it's going to cause me a problem. And of course, everybody knows that the online culture, for women and other groups, is not good. And I'm like, do I want that in my life? Do I just stay calm? And do I just kind of moderate what I'm saying or how I'm saying it? Or do I actually just get feisty and say it? And then actually that's even more proof. The kickback, anything online that's negative is the kick. But personally, you have to be able to take it. And I think that's really a very difficult situation for women and minority groups to be in, because you have to face that backlash.
Yeah, there's a huge emotional burden put on minorities and women to kind of fight the good fight, and I feel like we just need more allies in this case.
Yes, but I think one of the things is how do we do that? And that's probably my last question is, we are moving, we're progressing, but it feels a bit slow and it's still uphill. How do we make that push, that final push? Claire? What do we do? How do we do it? How do we push? How do we just get to this next level to push these things forward? We've had loads of conversations. You're doing good work. You're getting people in the room. You're getting people to talk to each other in a very particular way. That's very positive. But publicly, how do we do it?
We keep doing what we've been doing, which is talking and engaging. And I think we also need to be open as well. So we started out with a mindset of what the problems were, and the problems either expanded or they changed, etc. And people's, opinions changed, etc. But we can't ostracize people while we're looking for diversity. I think that's a big thing as well. So we can't just stay in a bubble and be chatting and arguing about what's going on. We need to be reaching out to the people. And I think we need to, and this is a hard thing, especially for women to do, as you said earlier, do I keep it in or do I be feisty? A man would never worry about being called feisty. But that's the thing, that's the thing, when a woman speaks up, God, she's a bit stubborn, she's a bit feisty, her. You'll hear that, and that will be annoying, and that might actually think, oh God, maybe I shouldn't say anything, maybe I'm scaring people away. You need to just not be scared and to keep pushing through it. And if we've hit a wall where we just keep doing the same things, we need to find something new to do.
To help us get over the wall.
Yeah, but we still need to be, and I don't have the answer of what are the doing things we should be doing right now, but something. Liz has the answer. In her shiny presentation coming later on.
Yeah, she's not saying anything else now. It's all going to come out of her presentation.
Yeah, and I'm not going to say too much, just to say that we need to make sure organisations have got the tools to press ahead with taking some actions, because we can talk, but
absolutely,
companies and organisations need the tools to help. And I know Liz is presenting on that. So. Liz has got a presentation.
Okay, I just want to thank the panel very much, and you, the audience, as well. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.